everyone. I think I had a test of patience on this one. I've been pretty busy lately, and so I decided to try and record this one without any notes this time. Just make a quick video talking about prepping for this upcoming fall Equinox event. But I have a lot I want to talk about because I've been having a lot of discussions lately with these different calendar camps, like the calculated calendar camps, and so I just have a lot to say. I just want to express my concern over the subtle differences I'm seeing between some of these calculated calendars, and I guess I just realized one of these I thought John Minten's calculated calendar wasn't gonna intercalate or adjust. If you're familiar, like the leap year or the leap month or the leap week, it adjusts like in the year 2022 or something. So I thought there was time to figure this out. But then recently I've been contacted by the woman who posted some Zadok Calendar videos on Jerry Morris's channel, I think last winter. Some of her followers have been contacting me lately because I made a calendar video kind of talking a little bit about this. And so I've been having some conversations actually with John Minten, with the lady who posted videos on Jerry Morris's channel, and with her followers lately, and I've just been getting a lot of information. But anyway, after talking with her followers, it prompted me to rewatch her videos, and I didn't realize this, but it looks like her calculated calendar is different than John Minten's calculated calendar, and her calculated calendar intercalates or does the 1 week adjustment this spring. And so all of a sudden I feel like there's not much time. Like, I thought we had until 2022 or whatever to kind of figure this out, because that's when John Minten was saying we needed to intercalate. But now all of a sudden I realize this woman is telling people they need to intercalate this spring. So it's like, oh no, now we need to really get to the bottom of this quickly, and we don't have any time to study this out. But anyway, as I was saying, my patience is getting tested a little bit, because I in the pinch for time, I decided to just try and go ahead and, I don't know, make a quick recording, and I talked a little bit about all of this, but I didn't have a script, and I just kind of winged it, and I just accidentally deleted my entire recording. So I have to start from scratch and redo it. So I don't know, maybe that's a good or a bad thing. I'll try and make this one shorter. But in any situation, I will be coming out with another series soon discussing these calculated calendars. I'm hoping to put this series out sometime in the next month. But I think it's going to be like a 3 or 4 part series where because I've been having all these conversations lately with all these calculated calendar groups, and so I'm seeing, yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying they're wrong and I'm right, or there's some things, but I am starting to get the sense that things might be starting to head in the wrong direction with these calculated calendars. So that's my leaning. But I'm gonna kind of go through it. I'm not saying that's absolute, but that is my leaning. I'll let you know my leaning. And I'm gonna go through her video, and I'm gonna talk about maybe John Minten's calendar too, but I'm going to go through her video point by point and address a lot of what she's talking about, because she's the one saying people need to intercalate this spring, and I don't think that's a good idea. I don't in a nutshell, I don't see it. She presents a lot of information in those 2 videos, and I just think it's so much information. I'm concerned that truth seekers are just kind of like, oh, all this information, like it's one of those things where it's like so. And I went through a couple waves of this when I started waking up to some aspects of truth. I came across 119 Ministries, and I started learning a lot about how, all the Creator's instructions are something we need to look at with fear and trembling, and it was just a lot to take in. And then when the calendar came up, I was just trying to understand so much at that time. I was like, oh, okay, they seem to know a lot about it. I'm going to just take their word for it and go with it. So and then later, after a couple of years, I started realizing some things that I don't think were lining up with Scripture. But it's the same kind of thing I'm concerned is happening with this woman. She presents a lot of information, and it generally sounds good, but I fear that, I'm not fear, but I don't know, I feel people are perhaps maybe the same thing that happened to me is happening to them. It's just hearing all this information. It's like, oh yeah, I hear her saying Enoch a lot, and she's talking about this and that, and it all makes sense, and everything's hunky-dory, and everyone's on the same page. And I guess she's talking about my calendar, as in your calendar, or maybe you were thinking she was talking about John Minten's calendar or Jerry Morris's calendar, and she was all on the same page as everyone else. But it's not. So I'm going to be coming out with a video series, not to say she's wrong necessarily. It's possible there are some things that are right, but my leaning is that a lot of it, unfortunately, is wrong, and it's departing from the simplicity of Genesis 1:14. And so I'm just going to be addressing her video point by point, just to try and make sure truth seekers are not just being overwhelmed with all this information, and they're kind of taking the time to realize, well, this point that she made isn't really, that's not how shall we say, an absolute witness to her calendar. I mean, there's loopholes in it, there's just holes in it, and I mean, like I said, the biggest thing I'm concerned about is I think it's a departure from Genesis 1:14, and yeah, if you watch her video series in addition, right off the bat in her first video, she says a little blurb about how and it's not that we put one witness above another necessarily, but she says something to that effect, and she's like, and I've had a conversation with her where she confirmed she would put the witness of this Zadok priestly order calendar that she found in the Dead Sea Scrolls above the witness of Enoch. She said if there was a disagreement, she would side with the priestly order over Enoch, and I think that's again something I couldn't agree with at the moment. I need to study the priestly order more maybe, but if there was a disagreement, preliminarily I would have to side with Enoch at this point, because when I read the scriptures, it was the reading of the scriptures that led me to Enoch, like just hearing the book of Jude quote Enoch. And if you watch some of the videos in the beginning of my playlist, I explain why I think, in a nutshell, Enoch is important book for us to be paying attention to in these last days. But so she said she'd put the witness of the calendar, the priestly order, over Enoch, and I can't agree with that. I think, but I'm at the same time I'm open to the possibility that even Enoch may be proved to have error or be inconsistent or something. Like I'm very open, but at the moment, If there is a disagreement between the priestly order and Enoch at the moment, I need to side with Enoch. And so she starts out her video by saying she's the opposite of that. So I mean, there are some big differences. I mean, if you're like me or Jerry, or I mean, I think John Minten, truly these individuals and myself are highly esteem the witness of Enoch, and so I mean, I don't know. Where am I going with this? Anyway, I'll be coming out with a series to kind of go over point. Okay, yeah, because like she'll say, I mean, aside from that blurb, she'll go on and she'll talk a lot about Enoch, and she'll say Enoch this, Enoch that, and she'll grab pieces of it, and unfortunately I think that's what she's doing. She's cherry picking pieces of Enoch, plucking them out of context, and more than once she says this stuff like, you know, pieces of Enoch are missing, and so it could say this, and she does that several times. And I mean, the thing is, there's you know, there's just at some point, I mean, she has to say that a bunch of times. At some point, you got to say, well, you know, it's not in Enoch. So, I mean, that's one perspective you have to be open to consider as well. Okay, yeah, it's possible that if there's a piece of Enoch missing, then anything is possible, and any kind of calculated calendar or any kind of interpretation or anything you want can be inserted there. But on the flip side of that, we can certainly consider what is there, and so in the absence of what isn't there, what is there can stand as a witness that needs to be considered too, and I don't think she looks at that. But I'll mention one more thing. I need to save this for the other video, but there's just so much I want to say about it, and I just keep remembering little pieces of it. Oh, well, that piece just went in and out of my brain. So, anyway, I am going to make a series about it, and I'm going to try and address it point by point. I'll have notes so I'm not rambling so much, and I'll just take you through the things that I see, and just want to make sure other truth seekers are thinking about this. Again, not to say that she's completely wrong or I'm completely right, or, you know, I think the Creator has given all of us little bits and pieces of this puzzle, and, you know, it's when we come together and we discuss it and we get iron sharpening iron that we're able to kind of take the pieces he's given us and interact and figure out, you know, what the big picture is. So preliminarily, yeah, okay, I do want to say one more thing. I thought about it. This is important. So, like, as far as these calculated calendar goes, and she even said it herself, but, like, say, for example, you had a blank mind. You would completely clean slate. It was like brand new programming, and you're starting to receive information from scratch. And the first thing you were given was Genesis 1:14. Genesis 1:14 says he's given us the luminaries for times, for seasons, for days, for years, and for signs. And so, as she pointed out in her video, this verse did not say, I've given you the Abib barley harvest 4 times and for seasons, and like, that's not something he gave us. He gave us the luminaries. In addition to that, I just want to make the point, he also didn't say, I give you a standalone calculation or number cycle, perpetual number cycle or calculation, independent of the witness of the luminaries. Like, everything is tied to the witness of the luminaries. So, in these calculated calendar camps, I've heard people make the claim that their number cycles and their calculated calendars are perfect and they could just run forever and you wouldn't need to, like, even look at the luminaries, and they go on to say looking at the luminaries is wickedness. And I think this is just something from Jubilees being plucked out of context and then supported by just some weak supports. Like, I think at one point, the woman who posted the video on Jerry Morris's channel said something, she was trying to compare it to the sin of David looking at Bathsheba, like he was looking, he was observing, and she gives several other examples like that, and that just, I have to say, that has nothing to do with, it's different. It's, you know, observing could be good or bad, you know, but just because David sinned through looking at Bathsheba doesn't mean that we're sinning by looking at our Creator's timepieces. I mean, for someone to say that seems to be a contradiction of Genesis 1:14. I mean, and we don't want to worship these things, obviously, and, you know, perhaps you want to make sure you're not looking at them improperly, and I think that's what the Book of Jubilees may have been talking about, but anyway, so if you started with a clean slate and no other knowledge about the Creator's times, and then Genesis 1:14 happened, from there you would have the next step from there would be two possibilities. One, the Creator would give us some kind of testimony, some kind of written testimony explaining what the cycles of these luminaries are. And so that's where Enoch can potentially come into play. They describe to us all kinds of things about the luminaries. Like, we know they're the timepieces, but now we need to understand some things about them. And so potentially Enoch comes into play there. And remember, Enoch, at one point Enoch said, this is thus, you know, I observed the luminaries and their cycles and yada yada. More or less it says, as they were in those days. So if that was in those days, and Enoch talks about the days being shortened and different things going on, so it's possible our concept of time is wrong, and maybe something has changed since Enoch, and but I mean, I believe the Creator is in control of his timepieces, so if something has changed, then we need to then ask the question, what do we do about that change? Is the only solution to deal with that change to try to come up with some kind of calculation? Or can we simply use the principles of Enoch and keep time based off of the principles we learned from Enoch? So kind of continuing from there and picking up where I left off, like if you clean slate knew nothing. So the one possibility after you know Genesis 1:14, you could either be given more information like Enoch possibly, or your second choice would be to go out and start looking at the luminaries yourself. Like, just, you were told those are the timepieces, so if you weren't further explained how those timepieces worked, like in Enoch, then your only other option would be to go and look and see what those luminaries are doing, and after watching them for a while, you'll eventually learn different things about, them and your Creator's time. So and if you did that, you would, I think after 1 or 2 years, it would not take more than 1 or 2 years for you to realize there were 4 seasons in a year cycle. You would start to realize this cycle repeats with 4 seasons. There'd be a really hot season and a really cold season, and then these 2 transition seasons between. So if you were given no other information than Genesis 1:14, that would be the first thing you notice. I think you would notice there are these 4 different seasons. So then as you start to pay more attention, I think you would begin to notice that there are 4 special days that separate these seasons, the seasonal days talked about in Enoch, or what we commonly, like the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. These are the summer and winter solstice events, or the days of equal light and equal darkness are the equinox events, and those split the seasons. That split the year in the 4 seasons that we're familiar with. So you gotta realize something, and this is what I'm getting to. And I'm gonna bring it back to Enoch here. Like, the simplicity of it is that the year has 4 seasons, and So that's important. Like, it doesn't have, it doesn't have 4 and like a quarter or 4 and a percent. Like, you gotta, like, according to Enoch, these seasonal days, the summer solstices, the equinox events, they are the last days of the season, kind of a special sign that the season has ended, and then the day following is the new day, the first day of the next season. So if all you knew was Genesis 1:14, and then you started observing and you figured out there are 4 seasons, and you figured out there are 4 special days that split the seasons into the year into these 4 parts, like I said, according to Enoch tells us that the first day of the new season is the day following these special seasonal days. So the next question you would have to ask yourself is, when does the cycle begin? Like, I realize there's this cycle of 4 seasons, but when does the year begin? Like, the Gregorian calendar starts its year in the dead of winter, and the Jewish tradition moon-based calendars, some of them start the year in the fall, and maybe some calendars start in the summer, and maybe some should start in the spring. But I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. But first of all, Enoch tells us when the year begins. He tells us the year begins in the spring. Second of all, I think the Creator also told us in like Exodus something that the year begins in the spring, in the month of Abib. Like, this month shall be the beginning of months for you. And I think that's why he had to give us that piece of information, either in Enoch or in Exodus. Like, otherwise we wouldn't know when the year cycle began. If he didn't say this is the beginning of the year in the month of Abib, we would not have known when that year cycle begins. Like, it just cycles, so who's to say it doesn't start in winter or in summer or in fall? Like, who's to say unless it's specified? And so that's why I think it's important when the Creator said, this shall be the beginning of months for you in the month of Abib. So it's not like Genesis 1:14. The Abib isn't something mentioned in Genesis 1:14, but it is somehow related, just to let us know which season to start the year in, I guess. But anyway, think about these seasons for a minute. Like I was saying, the year is comprised of 4 seasons. It's not comprised of 4 seasons and a fraction of a season. Like, I'm going to go to the extreme first. The extreme would be, think about the moon-based tradition Jewish calendars that sometimes intercalate the 13th month. And if you ask the scientific communities, like, I'm pretty sure it's well established, but tell me if I'm wrong, but there in the world, in modern science, when they tell you this is the first day of spring, or this is the first day of winter, or this is the first day of summer or fall, it's either the day of the equinox or the day following these events, solstice or equinox. Enoch says it's the day following, but maybe modern science says it's the day of. But anyway, my point is, there's a consensus that the season shifts on or adjacent to this day. Like, that's when the season begins. That's when everyone understands the seasons to begin, like either on or the day following. So if you are and that's the start of the season. Like I said, there are only 4 seasons in the year. There aren't 4 and a quarter, or whatever. So take the lunar 13-month intercalation, for example. When those guys intercalate a 13th month every so many years, their year starts like a month into the spring. some years. But the season of spring, it started back at the Equinox Event, either on or the day following. And so when they do their intercalation, they're off by a month. I mean, just step back and think about the seasons for a minute. Don't worry about months, don't worry about anything else. Just start with the basics that you knew and discovered. Genesis 1:14, either Enoch or observing, you discover there are 4 seasons, there are seasonal days. You realize that the seasons begin with either on or adjacent to the intercalary days, these seasonal days, the equinoxes or the solstices. And so, if you intercalate a 13th month, you could be 28 days into the season of spring. So if your year began there, then it's not a true cycle of 4 seasons. You're going to get maybe 2/3 of the season of spring, and then a full season of summer, full season of fall, full season of winter, and then some kind of fraction of spring again. And it's just, people talk about perfect math and stuff like this, and that's, I think more and more it's making an impression on me that the 4 seasons are pretty key. We know what a year is based on the 4 seasons. And so anyway, if you think the 28-day, 13-month moon calendar intercalation thing, that was a bit of an extreme case, but it's the same kind of concept when people are talking about trying to intercalate a week. That's what these calculated calendar groups are promoting. And it's the same kind of concept. I'm concerned it's not as extreme as 28 days, but it's just not starting on the first day of spring. The first day of spring is the first day of the spring season. It's the first day of the year. I think maybe the way I'm trying to say this is the first day of the year is the first day of spring. And I think that's what Enoch says. That's what makes sense if you step back and you think about what the Creator said when he said, this is the beginning of months, the months of Abib. That's what modern science says. I mean, anyway, but the intercalation of 7 days will do the same thing. It'll throw you into the middle, or it'll throw you out. It won't be at the beginning of the season, and so you'll have this little fraction of the season that isn't being counted in the year, and I just don't think that's how time works. But and keep in mind that this is important, because even if it's 7 days, even if it's 1 day is enough to mess up the 1 day is enough to shift all of the Creator's times. So 7 days is certainly enough to shift the Creator's times, and 28 days is also, or 29 point whatever they say the moon is also enough time to mess with the holy days of our Creator. So it's a big deal. It's something that needs to be strongly considered. And so to kind of wrap up my thoughts on that, and again, I'm going to make a video series where I kind of summarize this again, but then I'll be going point by point through this woman's video on Jerry Morse's channel. And by the way, some of her followers got in touch with me and I offended and defensive for her at me because I was referring to her as this woman, and I don't mean to deride her or be rude, but she has obviously chosen not to share her name in an effort to, protect her privacy or whatnot, and that's understandable. I mean, she does have a YouTube profile out there, but I don't think that's her name either. I think I have figured out what her name is through networking with different people, and it's not even what her followers have been saying her name is. Like, that's just her YouTube profile name. She is a different. But anyway, so I don't mean to disrespect her or anything, but that's just she wants her information kept private, and so that's why I'm referring to her generally as this woman who posted videos on Jerry's channel. But anyway, what was I going to say? I mean, I'll be coming out with a video series that talks more about all this point by point. But to summarize what I've been talking about, in place of this calculated stuff, like I said, the first thing, we need to confirm what we're dealing with. The observation of the luminaries to confirm the cycles of the luminaries, and that's why I make these prep for Equinox and Solstice event videos. But once we figure out what we're dealing with, 364 or 365 or something else, and eventually, hopefully, we'll figure out how to do this for the stars and the moon as well. Then we can start figuring out, well, what does Enoch say? What do the Dead Sea Scrolls say? What does modern science say? And if we find out that this, after doing physical observation that is confirmed, and I'm going to tell you how I think a good way to confirm that is here in a minute, and I do in my other videos, but once it's confirmed, then we ask the question, well, if it matches Enoch, great. If it doesn't match Enoch, why? And is the answer to do some kind of intercalation, or is there perhaps another way to deal with this? And I think there is another way to deal with it. And I just want to say really quickly, I think these calculated calendar camps, definitely the woman who posted the video on Jerry Morris's channel, she's all wrapped up in trying to combat these, it looks like she's combating some kind of lunar Sabbath Enoch calendar group, and she spent, like, her focus in the video a lot of times is to try and speak out against these people who have the shifting Sabbath and whatnot, and I agree with her for doing that, but I think she's thinking that it's either the lunar shifting Sabbath or it's her way. You know, there are these only two options. It's either they're right and she's wrong, or she's right and they're wrong, or whatever. I don't think she needs to step back, and she needs to realize maybe there's another way to think about this, and it's not just that she needs to lump every other calendar thought process up and throw it into this group of shifting Sabbath, and so listen to what I have to say and everyone else is wrong. I don't know if she realizes there's another perspective to think about this, but so anyway, there is another way to think about it other than the calculation, I think, and that is just simply taking the principles we learned in Enoch and applying them to whatever the cycles of the luminaries are now. Like I said, Enoch even said at the end of the luminary section, he said, you know, thus I observed the luminaries and their cycles, their courses in the heavens or whatnot, as they were in those days. And so they might not be that way anymore. Maybe our concept of time is wrong. Like, time is controlled by the cycles of the luminaries. So if the Creator's speeding that time up or slowing it down, he's in control of that, and he's controlling time. He's slowing it down or he's speeding it up. And so, I mean, Enoch only observed what they were doing in those days. They might be doing something different in these days for whatever reason. Maybe we'll understand at some point if it is in fact doing something else. But again, once you realize if it is doing something else, the question is, what do you do from there? Do you do a calculation, or perhaps can you take the principles learned in Enoch and figure things out from there? And so, to summarize that, I think that's what you can do. The principles we learned in Enoch is the first day of the new season of spring is the first day of the year. I'm pretty sure this is what Enoch says. Like, he'll talk about the seasonal days. And the first day of the new season is the day following these seasonal days, and he says, the first day of the season of spring is the first day of the year, and so we know that the first day of the year is the first day of spring, and we know that the first day of the second half of the year, according to Enoch, is the day following the fall equinox. So if you think about that for a minute, in the Bible, what I'm trying to say is you can count the Creator's holy days from these two time stamps. Like, you don't need to calculate them, you can count them, and I think that's the word, if the translation is correct, that's the word we see. We do see him saying count. And so you, from the first day of the year, for example, you can count, 14 days to get to Passover, and then you can count 7 weeks. It's not multiplication. I mean, it could be, it's multiplication or addition. It could be counting. I think that's one point. Another brief point I think the calculated calendar camp made. They're like, there's all kinds of math, and there's division and multiplication. I mean, I think he said count. He didn't say multiply. Maybe he did, but anyway, you could count or multiply. We don't need to get too caught up in different math terms here, but point is, you can count from the first day of the year. You can count, and you can get to all the spring holy times and the summer holy time, like Pentecost. You can get to those by counting from the first day of the year. Likewise, I believe you can count to the fall holy days from the first day of the 7th month. Like, that's a timestamp we're given in the quote-unquote Torah, the first day of the 7th month. And from the first day of the 7th month, you are able to calculate or count, 10 days. I'm going to have to... isn't that terrible? I have to refresh my memory. But, you can count to trumpets, you can count to atonement, you can count to, the Feast of Tabernacles, all from the first day of the 7th month. That's what the Torah, quote-unquote Torah, says. But Enoch also defines that timestamp. The first day of the 7th month, he defines that for us too, in a different way though. Like, if you think about it for a minute, there's 6 months in the year, according to Enoch, and I guess, according to modern science and a lot of these calendars that are starting to wake up, and realize there are only 12 months in the year. Like, there are some good videos, and check out my month calendar month video for more on this, where I talk about how the tree in Revelation only has 12 fruits, it says, for the 12 months of the year. In the Chronicles, there are stories about the 12 months of the year, and the priests or the kings or somebody having different services they need to perform on the months of the year, and there's just never ever any mention of a 13th month, and never. And there's mention of all the other months, 1 through 12. You've got information, some kind of recording talking about them, but there's no recording about 13th month. And anyway, watch my month video for more on that. But so like I said, I think there are different calendar groups that are starting to realize there are only 12 months in a year, and so they start to, they realize the moon gives you 13 months every once in a while, so that can't be it. So maybe it's a solar month, maybe it's a star month, or different things like this. But the point is, I believe there are 12 months in the year, and Enoch talks about this. And Enoch says that after the 6th month, the last day of the 6th month, you're going to have one of these seasonal days. And so the day following that is going to be the new season of fall. And that's just another way to say it. At the end of the 6th month, the day following that is the first day of the 7th month. And so that's why I say the quote-unquote Torah says first day of the 7th month, but Enoch also explains what the first day of the 7th month is too. The principles of Enoch define that for us. So the first day of the 1st month is the day following the spring equinox, and the first day of the 7th month is the day following the fall equinox. And so all the holy days of the fall, spring, and the fall can be counted from these 2 days. So potentially you don't even need to get too concerned about the concept of a month. I think there's the potential to be able to, because the thing is, that's one of the big problems with the calculated calendar camps, and I'll talk about that in my other video series. But like, this is one of the things I think they're cherry picking, and they're not realizing they're cherry picking, but they just, in their calculated calendars, they're latching onto a 30-day number cycle for their month that is completely independent of anything they say the luminaries are doing, and it's just this perpetual 30-day month cycle. And I mean, they say it comes from Enoch, but I have to tell you, I don't think Enoch talked about a perpetual 30-day month cycle or a 364-day month cycle. I might as well say that one. He didn't talk about number cycles just acting independently. That's not what Enoch talked about. Enoch, I think, pretty sure, he talked about these things only because they were things he was observing. It was a 30-day month because that's what the sun was doing. For 30 days, he recorded what it did between the portals, and it was 30 days. And then for the year, it did that 12 times plus the 4 seasonal days, and that's why you had 364. So like, these calculated calendar camps are cherry picking. They say the year, both of these calculated calendar camps, I've got them to, or I guess they say, either in their videos or conversations I've had with them, or their PDFs or websites or whatnot, they believe the sun is not 364 days cycle in the year anymore, like Enoch states, and that's a possibility I'm open to. Like, I mean, it'd be easier and nicer if it was 364, but if it's not, like I said, if it's not, then the next question to ask yourself is, what do we do about that? Do we do some kind of calculation, or do we potentially still follow the principles learned in Enoch? And so, so if they are saying that there are 365.2 whatever, or the lady Asher, well, yeah, see, that's her YouTube name, but I don't even know how to say it, but the lady on Jerry Morse's channel, she even said she believes that the solar cycle, or I don't know if she's flat Earth or globe, but whatever she says, either the cycle of the sun or the orbit of the Earth, depending on her perspective, she believes that it's 365 for 3 years, and then on the 4th year it's a literal 366. And John Minten believes it's on a 365.24 or something. But I mean, so that's pretty. Like, I wasn't even aware that modern science said that the orbit of the Earth around the sun, if that's true, I wasn't even aware that they were teaching people that some years the orbit is 365, and then for 1 year it's 366. Like, I think there's just some kind of voodoo going on with the Gregorian calendar. But anyway, so the point is, I think they're cherry picking this month. They're cherry picking the month cycle out of Enoch, and they're saying Enoch, but they're not really following Enoch, and they're plucking something out of context. And for example, you look at the month in these calculated calendar camps, they'll say, yeah, the months in the calculated calendar are 30-day months, but where is that coming from? Like I said, in Enoch, a month is only a month because that's what Enoch saw the sun doing. The sun, or the stars, even the moon, have their own month cycle. And again, watch my month video for more on that. And so a month is a month because of what the luminaries are doing. Like, this is Genesis 1:14 in action. Like, Enoch is Genesis 1:14 in action. It's recording the cycles of the luminaries. There's no independent number cycle. It's not a 30-day perpetual month cycle that just stands by itself, that's independent. See, this is what I'm talking about on a smaller scale. This 30-day month cycle being plucked out of context, they say, is independent of the of the luminaries. And I've heard on a mass scale, they also say their whole 364-day calendar is independent as well. So I mean, micro scale, macro scale. But anyway, the 30-day month, they'll pluck it out of Enoch, and they also pluck the 364 days out of Enoch and make it a standalone thing. And this is what I'm seeing. This is my current understanding. Maybe I can be wrong. I'm open to being wrong, but this is what I'm currently seeing. This is my current leaning. This is what I want to make truth seekers aware of, things like this. But they're plucking the 30-day month cycle out of context, and they're just making it this standalone number cycle that is independent of the witness of the luminaries. And so the thing is, if they are saying that the solar year is something other than 364 days, which is a possibility, but if it is, then I think there's another way to deal with it, and I explained that already. But if it is, to them, if they believe that the sun is not on a 364-day cycle, then if they believe it's 365 point something, then how can they say that they believe their month cycles are 30 days? That's a contradiction, because like I said, in Enoch and per Genesis, a month is only a month because it's defined that way by the sun. Like, there's nothing anywhere that says there's a number cycle perpetual by itself. So what, if you haven't seen it, what I'm trying to say is, and they talk about perfect numbers, like the Creator is a master mathematician, and I believe he is. But if you take 365 point something and divide it by 12, you're not going to get a perfect, I guess you have to subtract out the extra intercalary days, and so 365, or say 366, like I said, the woman on Jerry Morris's video, she said that, so take that for example, 366, or 365 point whatever, but 366 easier math for me. You subtract out the 4 intercalary days, because she talks about those, so you're left with either 361.25 or 362 days. So then you got to divide that by your 12 months that they claim, and you will no longer have 30-day months. You're going to have 30.1 something, and that's not perfect math. That's not beautiful, awe-inspiring, masterful mathematician math. That's odd. And so like I said, they cherry pick the 30-day month cycle out of Enoch, but I don't think you can do that. Enoch didn't talk about a standalone number cycle. It was only 30 days because that's what the sun and that's what the luminaries were doing. It was only 364 days because that's what the luminaries were doing. None of these things were an independent standalone number cycle. And so anyway, they do that. That's one of the things for the calculated calendar group. But anyway, what was I saying? So I think that's enough rambling on that topic for now. This video is getting way longer than I wanted it to be, and I still need to talk briefly about this upcoming Equinox event. So I'll talk more and address the points made in the calculated calendars video in another series I'll be coming out with soon. And again, the point of doing that is just iron sharpening iron. Like, this is not, I don't want to come out and be like, I hope we can work through this in love, but I'm definitely not saying we need to work through this in love, and by the way, I'm right and you're wrong. I think we need to work through this in love, and I'm open to the possibility I could be wrong. I'm hoping to just have some iron sharpening iron here, but right now my leaning is that there are some flaws in this calculated calendar stuff, and so I'll be coming out with a video series on that soon. But anyway, jumping back to the confirming the fall equinox. So I've made other videos. I'll post links in the description below this video for more explanation about different things I'm going to talk about briefly here. But as I've mentioned in my other videos, if you watch, I have a playlist dedicated to kind of show you the progression of what I've learned about trying to confirm the Creator's times by the witness of His heavenly luminaries. But it's been an interesting learning experience, and I'm still learning. But one thing that I have come to I'm feeling pretty confident about is it's just way easier to confirm the solstice events than it is the equinox events. So if you watch my latest videos when I was trying to confirm the summer solstice, I mean, I was still learning, I was still experimenting, and even though I think that was the one, either the winter or summer solstice is the best one to confirm, because either one of these 4 seasonal days is an opportunity to confirm something about our Creator's times. Like, people, I mean, it's true, they get much more fixated on the equinoxes and they don't pay too much attention to the solstices, but I wish people would pay more attention to the solstices. And I don't know if it's because they think they need to pay attention to the equinox because that tells them the beginning of the year or something, but all of these solar events, the solstices and the equinoxes, can be used to determine the year cycle. Okay, so I mean, that's a big question that's on the table. Are we dealing with 364, or is it something else? Is it 365.2 something? Is it 365 some years and 366 another year? Like, I hear a lot of questions on the table, and so that's why we're trying to do this, confirm this. But I think I lost my train of thought. But so anyway, yeah, okay, right. I was saying you can, so we need to confirm the duration of the year, and you can confirm the duration of the year cycle by either looking at the equinox or the solstice event. You just have to pick one of them and make sure you're nailing that day down correctly, and then check it a year later. It can work either for the equinox or the solstice event. So I hope if people watch this, they realize that and they start to try and confirm both of them. But anyway, I make other videos where I talk about how I think it just makes a lot more sense to confirm the solstice event, less variables to deal with, I think, than confirming the equinox event. The equinox event has a lot of things, I think, that need to be considered, whether you think the Earth is flat or whether you think it's a globe. There's still a lot of things to consider in either one of those camps, and I'll have a link in the description of the video below to a video where I kind of try and point out all the geometric challenges that I see with trying to confirm the equinox, and none of these things matter for the solstice event. Like, the solstice event is easy. Like, the sun is going to reach its highest and its lowest points. It's going to reach 2 extreme points. And one day you're just going to see the shadow return. Like, it's going to be heading one way, and then the shadow's going to stop, and it's going to start heading north-south, like north-south movement, if you've seen my other videos. So on that note, let's talk about this picture you're looking at again real quick. So if you pick your sundial, you make sure you're picking a consistent point. Like, if you're picking your chimney, don't pick one corner of your chimney one morning and then the next day pick a different corner of your chimney. You need to pick a consistent point from day to day. And over the course of the day, just kind of mark where that point is on your paper or on the ground with an X or a mark or something. And so you'll see these patterns that you see on this paper. Before the equinox event, you'll see one of these arcs, and then on the equinox event, theoretically, you will see a straight line or something very close to a straight line. And then, the day following the equinox event, you will see the line arc the other way. And so so that's an important thing. You need to record 3 days of data. I think you need to do 3 days of data. I've seen some people do 2 days of data, 1 day of data, and call it quits. But we're still pioneering this. We need to kind of exhaust every avenue of confirming this. And so, if it was only collected for 2 days of data, who is to say that the line might not have gotten straighter on the 3rd day of data you collected? You need to do 3 days of data so that you can see the arc one way, and then you see the straight line, and then you see the arc the other way. Otherwise, if you only collect 2 days of data, you just don't know. And this is true for the solstice or the equinox event. I think you need 3 days of data to be able to confirm the sign that the sun is giving. So otherwise, you don't know. The line for the solstice event could still be progressing one way or the other. You can't tell with just 2 data points. And with the equinox event, you can't tell if it's flipped. You need to do it 3 days to make sure it flipped and it didn't just get straighter than the day before. So anyway, that's important for this upcoming equinox event. 3 days of data, back-to-back data. Make sure you hopefully have consistent sunlight, bright, full sunlight, and you're picking a consistent point. The other thing for the equinox event, like I said, due to the geometric challenges of potentially it being a flat or a globe Earth, I think it is important to have 3 people confirming this. I would hope someday we have hundreds and thousands of people confirming this, but right now we need at least 3 people to do this. One far north of the equator, south of the equator, and then someone near the equator. And this is important. Again, I describe it in my video just because of the different geometry going on. People need to do it in these 3 different locations, and if they all see the curve on one day, and then they see the straight line on the next day, and then they see the curve flip on the 3rd day, and all 3 locations on Earth, the south, the north, and the equinox, saw these 3 line patterns on the same days, then I would say that's good confirmation of an equinox event. And there's not that involved for a solstice event. You don't need 3 people on 3 different spots of Earth, because no matter if it's flat or ball, for a solstice event, the sun's going to hit its extreme point, and no matter what the geometry, there's going to be a day when everyone sees the sun hit that extreme point, and then it's going to start to return. So there's not as many variables for confirming a solstice event. But anyway, hope you get out and try and confirm the equinox event anyway. I guess I'm going to try it again this fall, but so far to my knowledge, I don't know of anyone near the equator who's been doing this. So if you're near the equator and you're hearing me this video, this is for you. Please get out there and start recording data and share it. I'll leave my email in the description below. Share it, make your own video, let me know, let others know. But yeah, I'll be trying it again this fall, and if you watched my last summer solstice video, I think the conclusion I came to was I just needed a much taller sundial. That's going to take all the guesswork out, so I think next solstice event I'm going to try and go on vacation somewhere where there's a tall building or like the Washington Monument or a skyscraper in the city or something, and use the shadow from one of those bad boys to kind of do these confirmations, because those shadows will move as much as 10 feet per day. So I mean, there's going to be no guesswork in that. And I have some tips and different things that I discuss, that you can do with your hand. Just different methods for. I have a lot of confidence in doing that, so hopefully someday I get to do that. Or if you're interested, if you live near a tall city or monument or something and you want to try it, let me know and I'll give you a crash course on some of these special tips for doing that. Or I do mention them in some of my other videos. I think the winter solstice video I mention it in that one. So get in touch with me or watch the videos. But this fall, I think I'm going to go back to my nail, the little nail in the board, just for this fall. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to try it with the nail because since the last time I did it with a nail, I think there's something new two things new that I didn't realize before when I was doing it with the nail before. One was the need for consistent sunlight, and so I think, on some days I was able to see a noticeable difference with my 3-inch nail when I had consistent sunlight, but then it was really hard to tell one day. I think the last day I tried it, and I just kind of gave up because it was just so hard to tell. But if you check the videos, you'll see it was overcast that day, and I was like having a hard time trying to see the image, and I was flipping to the negative and doing things with the photo to try and see the shadow better because the lighting was dull. But I didn't realize how much the shadow jumps around in dull lighting or bright lighting, and I think I discussed this more in my winter solstice video. But and if you go to my channel, if you just click on like my icon below the video, the photo, it'll take you to my channel, and then you click on videos and you can see a list of all these videos, because some people will ask me where these videos are, and I think they might just not know how to get to the channel, so that's how you do it. But anyway, going back to the 3-inch tall nail, because going back to the 3-inch tall nail, because I didn't realize how much the lighting played into effect. So the dull lighting on that last day I tried to record it might have canceled out with the movement the sun did when it was returning or doing something, and so I didn't get good readings, and I kind of gave up, and I said I need to look at a taller sundial. But I'm going to try it again with bright lighting and consistent lighting and see how that goes this year. The other thing I noticed is, if you're looking at this picture, see how these 3 lines get close together right at the center of the page? Well, that's around solar noon, and so around solar noon is going to be the hardest time of day to see a difference between your data points. Like, they're going to be really close together. This picture is exaggerated, and it's going to be really, but in the real, depending on the height of your sundial, like, it's going to be really hard to see the difference from day to day. It's going to be like very small difference. But the thing I noticed that I might not have thought too much of before was, then in the middle of the page they're really close, but for the Equinox event, when you get out to the sides of the page, notice how those patterns all diverge and your points get far apart. So that is something I think I want to try this year. That's another reason why I'm going to go ahead and try the nail again. And those points on the side that diverge and are farther apart are points collected in the early morning and the later in the evening, if you're able to do that. There's more of an extreme swing at that point, and the data points will be farther apart, and you'll be able to tell the difference. So if you're collecting your data, I recommend at least 3 points of data for the 3 back-to-back days of data you collect. Try to collect a data point in the morning and somewhere around solar noon, which I think around central United States is somewhere around 1:30ish. Somewhere around 1:30 is fine. You don't need to know exactly when solar noon is, but get 3 points so you can kind of see your triangular V shape or whatever. So and then you'll hopefully be able to see a difference from day to day, because that's really the key, to figure out a way to do your sundial so you're seeing the difference from day to day. And so if you pick in your point, at least 1 point in the early morning and the later evening, if you're able to do that, then I think it'll be easy for you to see how the arc or the V is facing one way one day, then you get something close to a straight line the next day, and then on the third day you see the V is flipping, or the arc is flipping. And I say do it in the early morning or evening if you can, because I can't do it too early in the morning or too late in the evening, because I live on the side of a mountain and the sun doesn't even come into view until like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning or something. but maybe you live in the flatland or something, and you can do this. And make sure your recording surface is level. Get a construction level out and level it in both directions. Because if you do it on a slope or uneven terrain, like I did it out in my yard on uneven terrain a couple times, and it just for the Equinox event, it's just more challenging. Like, that's just another challenge. You need a flat surface. For the solstice event, you don't have to worry about that. See, it's much simpler to do the solstice event. But anyway, yeah, so that's what I recommend for this upcoming fall Equinox event. Get out there, give it a shot. The more you do it, the better you'll become, the more you'll find something that works for you, you're comfortable with. Just let's work together to try and confirm these things. The last thing I want to mention real quick, I've seen Jerry Morris and Juan Carlos do, they try to confirm these Equinox event using like the wheel looking thing. I would shy away from that myself. And I describe why in other videos, but I'm glad Juan Carlos does both the wheel and the flat level board. That's good. But that's what I would recommend. You don't need to try and make yourself one of those wheels. Just use a flat board and a little nail or some kind of obelisk or something. But anyway, yeah, do this. Try and get out there. Let's work together. Let's try and confirm these things. And I believe if we're doing this and we're seeking on this truth with a pure heart, eventually we will get solid confirmation, both from the heavenly luminaries and also from the writings, the recordings that we have, whether it be Enoch or the quote-unquote Torah or something else. So anyway, I guess that's it for now. This video ended up being much longer than I wanted it to be, but I just had a long drive to work, and I guess I had a lot to say, so hopefully you're able to get through it. I guess at the end isn't the best time to mention it, but hopefully you know how to speed a video up. You can watch it on twice as fast, so you can get through it twice as fast. I mentioned that in another one of my videos, if you know how to adjust the speed of the YouTube video. But anyway, be on the lookout for the video series I'll be coming out with soon on the calculated calendars, these Zadok calendars and the priestly order and whatnot. Okay, shalom, and may Yah bless you. Continually seek truth with a pure heart.